Mexican residency in 2026 for Americans and Canadians. I'm Shasta Townsend. I have helped hundreds of Americans and Canadians move to Mexico with more ease and grace. And let's talk about what you really need to know in very simple terms about getting your Mexican residency. All right, bear with me while I bring up my brief presentation so you can see it all while I go along. So, Mexican residency for foreigners, what you need to know. So let's talk about why even consider this, right? Why are you even looking at Mexico? Why look at residency? So we do know that Mexico does offer a lower cost of living when we compare apples to Canada and the US. It's not the cheapest country to live in the world, but it definitely is less money and I have an amazing quality of life. There's great weather. There's also excellent healthcare. And here's the thing, residency allows you to stay longer in Mexico than the standard tourist permit. And tourist permits are changing. You automatically get 180 days, and now maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe 180 days. So having a residency makes your life more secure and more predictable, especially if you really do plan to spend over 6 months, a year here, or you're moving here pretty indefinitely, right? And definitely right now, Americans and Canadians are the largest group of people in the world applying for Mexican residency. So it is very busy, but here's really what you need to know. Mexico has two types of residency, super simple, super cut and dry. One is called temporary. Temporary residency is really for people who want to spend 180 days or more in Mexico. Maybe you want to buy a property or you own property and you're not of retirement age. That's kind of the key. You are not of retirement age, meaning that you really are under the age of 65, 62. And maybe you're also, like many of my clients, trying to sort of decide on your long-term plans. You may not be ready to move here right now, but you maybe want a plan B, or you want to have really the freedom to come into Mexico and stay as a resident. There's also a lot of benefits. You can enter and exit the country at any time. You do not have to spend 180 days in Mexico, so it makes for a great visa because, unlike a lot of European residency visas where you have to be in that country for anywhere from 90 to 180 days, Mexico does not require you to do that. You must have residency in order to obtain an RFC number. That is a personal tax number. You will need that if you're moving to Mexico or spending any amount of time here. Why? Because you need an RFC to open a bank account, get on Amazon, use some of the apps down here even. And so Mexico is really sort of tightening the bureaucratic measures. It doesn't mean you pay tax to the Mexican government. I just want to be clear. But you have to have residency, RFC, and then a bank account, for example. When you have temporary residency, you can also bring in a foreign plated vehicle. You don't nationalize it. You get a temporary import permit, and you can drive into Mexico and have a vehicle down here. The way it's working right now with temporary residency is most of the consulates are giving 1 year to start. So you would get your temporary residency for 1 year. After holding it for 1 year, you would then get 3 years. Okay, so it's 1, 3, and then after having it for 4 years, okay, once you have temporary for 4 years, you can automatically become a permanent resident and you do not have to go through all the hoops to do that. Permanent residency, again, basically there's two residencies, one temporary, one permanent. Permanent is really designed, it's a retiree visa, right? Philosophically, it's a retirement visa. You have to be at least age 62. They are not giving it to really anybody younger than that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about financials. You have to show the financials. But permanent, for those of you that are over the age of 62, may be the way to go. Why? There's no renewals required. Okay, permanent is permanent. Again, you can open a bank account, you can obtain your RFC number, you can spend unlimited time in Mexico, you have a greater peace of mind. And again, even with permanent, you are not required to spend the whole year in Mexico. Note though that if you have permanent residency, you cannot bring in a foreign plated vehicle. You cannot drive, for example, a vehicle from the US into Mexico. So Mexico makes it pretty simple to qualify. It is basically answering the question, do you have the money, honey? Do you have the money, honey? So let's dive into that. Temporary residency. It's one of the following, okay? And I did this in American dollars, but translate this into Canadian. It is either demonstrating a monthly income of anywhere net of 4,700 to 5,200 US for the following, or the previous, I should say, for the previous 6 months. So you have to demonstrate that you're either getting paid or you're paying yourself anywhere between 4,700 to 5,200 US per month. You must show either pay stubs, income statements, and bank statements. And they also have to be signed. Yes, they do have to be signed. So that is the income requirement, okay? Or it's not both, or you can show a savings, a 401k, RRSPs if you're Canadian, of approximately 75,000 to 80,000 US over the last 12 months. So if you just sold your house last month, you have $700,000 you're sitting in a bank account, you cannot apply until you can show 12 months of that money sitting in your account. That's just the way they roll. Okay, that's how it goes. Why the variations in those numbers? Because it depends on the consulate that you go to. Yes, consulates throughout Canada and the US have different financial requirements. I am giving you the general requirements that we're seeing again in 2026. So for permanent residency, again, do you have the money, honey? And do you have the years, right? So permanent, the first requirement is you must be at least 62 years of age. If not, you will be going for temporary. There's no discussion about that. If you're 62 and older, you must show a retirement income of anywhere between 7,500 to 8,000 US a month. And again, you have to show that. So you've been receiving that for the last 6 months, or you have a savings investment, again, 401k, RRSPs of approximately 300,000 US. And you have to show that for 12 months. Okay. These are not negotiable. This is what the consulates want. And again, you have to bring your paperwork. So would you be bringing 12 months of bank statements? You bet your booty. That's exactly what you have to do. And friend, every single page. I've had clients go to the consulate with 300 pages of paperwork, and that's just the way that's the way it rolls in Mexico. They love paperwork, they love bureaucracy. But really, really simply, those are the financial requirements. We can't argue with it. It is what it is. So the challenge again is that the consulates have a variety of numbers, right? So I'm giving you the ranges that we're seeing in consulates right now. So when you go to the consulate, generally most people go to the consulate that's closest to them in their home state or their home province. And some consulates in the US will not take out of state clients. They will not take out of state appointments. So you need to check two things when you go to the consulate website. What are their requirements in terms of financials? They will spell it out. They'll say, we need to see proof of income, for example, in the rate of 4,700 US a month or 5,200 Canadian, whatever the consulate says. And then you also need to see if they take out of state or out of province appointments, clients. Many of the provinces in Canada will take out of province and even out of country. I have some American clients who are going into Canada right now, for a variety of reasons, but those are things that you really want to check out. And sometimes my clients get really upset. Well, my consulate is higher than, say, the one in Las Vegas. And it just depends on what it costs to live in the state or the province, where you are applying. And that's the way they do it in Mexico. How it actually works, I want to be super clear about this. You cannot apply from within Mexico. You need to apply from the US or Canada, and you get an appointment at a consulate outside, obviously, of Mexico. Again, US or Canada, or wherever. You could go to Belize, Guatemala, wherever there's a consulate. Basically 100% of my clients are going to the US or Canada. You would attend your interview. So you will get all your paperwork together. You book an appointment at the consulate, and the consulates do have different processes for booking appointments. You need to pay attention to that. Sometimes you send an email request. Sometimes you can book right online. Sometimes you have to do a pre-interview, and then sometimes it's just straight to interview. But you would book that consulate appointment. And yes, it takes a ton of patience because consulate appointments are extremely sought after right now. They'll book your consulate appointment, and then you would attend an interview. And you have to take all your paperwork, friends. You have to take whatever it is, those 300 pages of stamped bank statements. You have to take your application. You have to take your actual cita, your actual appointment page, right? You have to have the correct size of a picture, which is not the same size as passport pictures in the US. And you need to be prepared for that interview, okay? Sometimes interviews last 5 minutes, and sometimes they're 3 hours. And they will ask you all kinds of questions. Why are you moving to Mexico? Have you looked at real estate? Do you know where you're moving to? If you have children, they'll ask you about education. So don't go into those appointments thinking that you can wing it. Also, do not be rude or pushy. Mexico has zero tolerance for pushy energy. We might be used to being super direct and maybe a little pushy in Canada and the US. It doesn't fly in Mexico. And technically, in the consulate, you're on Mexican soil. So be polite, be friendly. If you know Spanish, address people in Spanish. And again, you want to answer questions with consistency, conciseness, but also be really prepared, right? Because I see people are being declined because they're not answering the questions well in terms of going to the consulate. Once you bring all your paperwork, you do the interview at the consulate. If you're approved, most consulates will give you a visa sticker literally in your passport. Some consulates require you to come back, like New York City, for example, often requires clients to come back to pick up the visa. But generally, 90% of the consulates, you get the sticker in your passport. Then you have to start your clock, okay? You must come into Mexico. Stage 2, the conje has to be done in Mexico. You go to immigration, or what is called INM. It is in Spanish. It's where often people hire me or people like me to help them with this because your appointment is going to be in Spanish. You've already been approved, but you will be asked some questions again. You will do biometrics, and you will get your card that day. Usually you get your card that day. Some INM offices, it can take a week or up to 30 days is actually the legal days that the can take to create your actual residency card. But most of the time it is being done within a day. Cool. Okay. So some common mistakes to avoid: going to the wrong consulate, meaning that they either do not take out of state or out of province people, or you do not meet their requirements, or they're really challenging to deal with. There are consulates right now that we are telling our clients not to go to because they are very challenging in terms of the questions that they're asking people. So going to the wrong consulate, again, you want to avoid that. Showing the wrong financial documents. If you're not prepared, you really don't have the right things, you will be declined. Even one thing that's off, Mexico is very bureaucratic, okay? They take paperwork very seriously. And the confusing thing is, most of the time on the websites, the consulate websites, they don't even tell you what you really should be bringing. So it can be challenging with that. But again, you really just want to make sure you're bringing all of your statements that they have been signed or have a bank stamp on them. You want to make sure you have your application and that it's filled out correctly. You want to make sure you have your appointment page. You have to have it printed off and you have to bring a photo of yourself. Okay. And this is not negotiable. I have clients that are like, well, really, do I have to print all this stuff off? Yes, you must print it off. Again, the consulate is very confidential. They're not going to share your data, right? But you have to bring all of that. Again, if you miss your appointment, that's not a great thing. Okay. Make sure that you make your appointments. If you're set up for July 14th at 9 a.m., you're there at 8:45. If you enter Mexico, once you get stage one done, when you go through the airport, if you're crossing at an airport, you're crossing into Mexico, you're coming into Mexico, you must get your visa stamped that says 2 weeks, 2 semanas, conge. Okay. You have to do that. There has been a lot of errors here. I lived outside Puerto Vallarta here at the PVR airport. We've had multiple issues with immigration and passport control not stamping those visas correctly. So, my insider tip is before you even leave the passport window, you look to make sure that your visa has been stamped correctly. If it has not been stamped correctly, do not leave passport control. Ask politely to see a manager and ask them to change that. If you enter Mexico and you do not have the correct stamp, you cannot complete stage two. The real pain in the butt about that is basically you can't leave the country until you get stage two done or you get permission to leave the country. Meaning that if you leave the country, your visa is invalidated. You have to start the whole process again. So please, friend, make sure when you go through passport control that you get the right stamp. And then trying to do this alone, as you can hear, there's a lot of moving pieces. So, one small thing, even filling out the application, I have had 100% of our clients fill out the application incorrectly. We always correct it in everything that we do. We verify and vet everything, but really take your time, make sure that you have things correct. Again, I think that this is such a fabulous country to live in. I've had my residency now for 4 years. I'm actually about to become a permanent resident here in Mexico. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world. And Mexican residency, again, it can give you a lot of peace of mind. It's a great plan B, and it's a great country to live in. So whether you're here part-time, retiring permanently, investing in property, or again, you just want a plan B, consider Mexican residency. I'm Shasta Townsend. I like making Mexico easier for you. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for more insightful videos on moving to Mexico.